Hi and welcome. In this lecture, I'll explain why I opted to use the LattePanda Mu reference design as the primary aid for learning and teaching high-speed PCB design. As you'll realize very soon, high-speed PCB design is completely different from traditional circuit design. The LattePanda Mu reference design, you can see its GitHub repository here, utilizes proven industry practices, and as a result, we are best positioned to understand those practices and then apply them in our custom PCB. The LattePanda Mu represents an excellent exemplar of embedded computing, and it's a complete x86 computer system packed into a tiny SODIMM form factor. But here is a challenge. You can see the LattePanda Mu board right here. Now the challenge is that cramming this much computational power into such a small space does create some serious engineering challenges that we need to understand and respect. I'll start with a fundamental principle. Never start high-speed design from scratch when a proven reference exists. The LattePanda team has invested thousands of hours and significant resources into developing and validating the light carrier reference design, which eventually gives you this board right here. This isn't just a quick example. This board has gone through rigorous testing, compliance verification, and real-world validation, and it's been running on my desk for a few months now. If you choose to deviate from a proven reference design, then you're essentially volunteering to repeat all of this expensive validation work yourself. Signal integrity failures, EMC compliance issues, interoperability problems, all can require multiple PCB revisions to resolve, and that turns a straightforward project into a costly nightmare. Personally, I'm not keen to do something like that. Now, this reference design gives us three critical advantages. First, proven electrical performance. Every high-speed interface has been characterized and validated. The USB ports work reliably. The PCI slots. So here are the USB ports. And we've got the PCI ports as well. Those have been tested and designed to maintain signal integrity. And of course, there is another example, the HDMI port. And its output meet the required specifications so you can plug it into a screen and not risk destroying it. Second, there are regulatory compliance issues. The design has been tested for electromagnetic compatibility, and this is crucial because EMC failures often aren't discovered until late in development, and then fixing them can require major layout changes. And third is the component qualification. Every part on this board has been tested across temperature ranges with real-world variations. You know that these components will work reliably together because, in my case, I've been using this board for a few months now with no issues at all. If I choose to swap these components with other components, I do risk variations in the quality of the final board that I just haven't tested enough. I will have to do it in practice, and that will take time and, of course, money. So the next question is, what makes this high-speed design so different from the microcontroller boards that you may have been used to? So the key here is to understand when signals stop behaving like simple connections and start behaving like transmission lines. This happens when signal rise times become fast enough that the electrical length of your traces start to matter. Modern compute modules like the LattePanda Mu operate with incredibly fast edge rates. USB 3.2, for example, runs at 10 gigabits per second. PCIe 3.0 operates at 8 gigahertz fundamental frequency. HDMI pushes multiple gigahertz of video data. So at these speeds, a simple wire trace becomes a complex transmission line with characteristic impedance, reflections, and crosstalk. This means that we have to think about things such as impedance control. Every high-speed trace must have precisely controlled characteristic impedance. Get this wrong and your signals will reflect back and forth, creating noise and data errors. Return current paths. High-frequency currents need continuous ground planes directly underneath the signal traces. Break this rule and you get EMI radiation and signal integrity problems. Crosstalk management. When you have multiple high-speed signals that run near each other, they can couple energy between traces, corrupting data. There's power delivery. Modern processors create massive current transients that can cause voltage drops and noise if not properly managed. And these aren't just theoretical concerns, they are practical engineering requirements that determine whether your board works reliably or fails intermittently in ways that are difficult to debug. Let's switch now to the core of our computer, the LattePanda Compute module, and why I think it's a perfect learning platform. The LattePanda Mu is an excellent choice for learning high-speed design because it demonstrates all the key challenges of modern computer hardware in a manageable package. This small module integrates the Intel N100 processor with up to 16 gigabytes of memory and 64 gigabytes of storage. What makes this special for our purposes is this interface down here. This is a dense 260 pin connector. Through this connector, you get up to 9 PCIe lanes, 4 USB 3.2 ports, triple display outputs, and extensive GPIO. And all that requires different high-speed design techniques. It's like having a complete computer engineering curriculum really packed into this one connector. The module also handles the most challenging aspects for us: the processor, right up here, power delivery, memory interface timing, and thermal management. All those problems are solved within the module. If we were to do that, we'd have to learn a lot more than the techniques that we are going to learn in this course, and that would increase the difficulty level of this course significantly. I do plan to tackle those issues in a later course, but I think it is much better and more prudent for us as part of our learning journey to learn the more fundamental challenges around high-speed design, and then we go to the even more difficult topics such as the ones that I described just a moment ago. The whole idea by using the LattePanda Mu module is to learn the carrier board design principles first and avoid getting overwhelmed by processor level complexity. Now let's look at what makes the light carrier reference design so well engineered. I've downloaded the project from GitHub here, and you can see it in my KiCad instance. Looking at the schematic organization first, let's have a look at the root sheet. Notice how they've separated functionality into logical boards. The power management, which is up here, looks like this. Once you zoom into it, is isolated from the high-speed interfaces, where you can see elsewhere. So here's a couple of blocks, there's PCIe, USB 2 and 3, etc. These are separate high-speed interfaces, and that makes their design easier to understand and debug. The power architecture is particularly clever. The designers of the board decided to go for a dual input strategy with USB-C with power delivery negotiation for modern adapters, plus the traditional barrel jack. You can see here we've got both USB-C and the barrel jack connector for compatibility. And the key insight here is that PCIe requires exactly 12 volts. So rather than adding another switching regulator, they designed the system to accept 12 volts input directly and then distribute it efficiently. Now, if you have a look at the KiCad PCB layout now, you can see several high-speed design principles in action. So we've got the layer stackup architecture. So let's have a look at that. You can go to the physical stackup, and you can see here that we've got a 4-layer board with signal, ground signal arrangement. So we've got signal at the top, power, and then signal at the very bottom. So the dual ground planes provide excellent return current paths for high-speed signals while keeping costs reasonable. I could have gone for a 6-layer PCB design here, which would have certain advantages, but I decided to stick with the 4-layer PCB, both because the reference design does use 4 PCBs, so I know that it works, and also because that would keep the costs down. Now we also have impedance standardization. If we go to the net classes here, you can see that we have 90 ohm and 100 ohm differential impedance for the various high-speed interfaces, and this simplifies the stack-up design and manufacturing while maintaining good performance margins. And I'll show you how to calculate these numbers here to match the capabilities of the manufacturer. We also have ground plane continuity. So for example, if we have a look at the zone manager, and let's search, for example, for ground, you'll see that we've got ground planes in the various layers, front and back copper, front and back copper, and then both inner copper layers have both ground and power zones designed. So the VDC power polygon here, polygons are the shapes that are used to create those zones, are carefully shaped to maintain continuous ground reference under all of the differential pairs. And this is critical for maintaining signal integrity. The differential pairs, if you're not familiar with the concept, are lines such as this one here. So zoom in, you can see this is one of the high-speed interfaces, and we've got these two pads that propagate through these two traces and lines. You can see one is marked with a minus, the other one is marked with a plus. These work together, and there are specific characteristics that have to do, for example, with the spacing between the two lines, the width of the lines, or tracks. I use those two words interchangeably, so tracks, and then also how close those differential pairs are to other differential pairs. You can see here two differential pairs together. This distance between the two is calculated, and there's got to be a minimum distance between them to avoid corruption caused from phenomena such as crosstalk, for example. And another issue to consider is the component placement. So high-speed connectors are placed strategically to minimize trace length. So you got to be careful where you decide to put them. And you also want to keep different interface types separated to reduce crosstalk. I also want to talk a little bit about interface-specific challenges. So each high-speed interface presents unique challenges that the reference design addresses and that we can learn from. Let's start with USB 3. So let's go to the schematic, have a look at the USB sheet, and then here we've got a stack that contains two USB 3 ports. Click on that and you'll see that in the layout, it will take us straight to that socket here, which contains two USB 3A ports. So the implementation for these interfaces, for the USB 3.2 interface, requires managing both the legacy USB 2.0 signals and the new super speed differential pairs. You can see those differential pairs right here. The design maintains proper impedance for both while keeping them properly isolated. Then we also have, as another example, the PCIe, which is this socket right here. You can plug in, for example, a GPU in this socket. This is particularly demanding because it requires precise timing relationships between multiple lanes. I'm not going to be implementing the full-size PCIe slot in the custom design for simplicity, but the reference design does show proper length matching via management techniques that will apply elsewhere. And that is particularly important for the M2 keys here. So you can see the reference design contains two M2 slots for storage and for Wi-Fi. And those have their own PCIe-based challenges, but in a more compact form factor. I'll be implementing both M.2 slots in this design, which requires attention to the high-speed PCIe differential pairs, proper grounding around the connector, and managing the shorter trace lengths that M2.0's compact format demands. Next up, we've got the HDMI port right here. You can see that port here with its own differential pairs. So HDMI creates EMI challenges because of the high frequency content and multiple differential pairs. Here, the reference design uses careful grounding and component placement to minimize radiation. Lastly, I'm going to quickly have a look at the Ethernet connector. Now, this is a gigabit Ethernet connector, which combines high-speed digital signaling with sensitive analog circuits. So the reference design demonstrates proper isolation between the PHY, which is the physical interface, and magnetics while maintaining signal integrity. I've talked a lot about what the reference design looks like, and I've given you some details about the challenges that we'll be facing. I want to take a couple of minutes now to talk about the simplified design that I decided to go with. For the custom carrier board design, that is the topic of this course, I decided to create a simplified but fully functional version of this reference design. So the goals here are, of course, education. We are going to implement enough interfaces to learn all the key high-speed design principles without unnecessary complexity. There's cost optimization concerns as well. I want to eventually manufacture this board, and I want to do that in a cost-effective way, which is, I believe, reasonable for any designer to have minimization of costs as one of the goals of their design efforts. So we're going to reduce component counts and use a simpler feature set to keep those manufacturing costs reasonable. Then there's also the real world utility. I want this board to be genuinely useful, and I do plan to use it as a daily computer. As a compact server, perhaps, a desktop system, will be able to do all of that just with a more focused feature set. And the really nice thing, of course, is that because the system is modular, you will be able to upgrade its capabilities simply by choosing a more powerful compute module or the compute module that matches the application that you want to use this board for. So I think that this approach gives us the best of both worlds. We're going to have a manageable learning project that still demonstrates all of the critical high-speed design principles that you need to master without the complexity, without the additional complexity of a board like the full reference design for the LattePanda. Okay, so let's conclude. The key takeaway from this lecture is that high-speed PCB design isn't magic, but it does require understanding and respecting the physics of high-frequency electronics. The reference design gives us a proven foundation to build upon, and the LattePanda Mu module provides an excellent learning platform that demonstrates all of the key principles that we want to learn. So in the next lecture, I'll give you a primer on high-speed PCB design that contains the fundamental techniques that we'll be using throughout the course.